Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tashina Barber. I am the program manager in the American Indian Resource Center. I'm a citizen of the Diné Nation. For my Diné relatives in the room and online, Yaat Tashina Barber, Yanishya, Tuahana Nishna, but Ani Bashichin, Ashiha Dashache, Dokintlachini Dashanala. Today, I'd like to read the University of Utah's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of our Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribal relatives. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations, the urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. We also want to recognize that land acknowledgements are a valuable first step in recognizing our people's history and connection to the land, but they also should be accompanied by meaningful actions and engagement. The American Indian Resource Center, we have our director, Samantha Eldridge, and our program coordinator, Haley Roberts, who work in the center alongside me. We are a cultural conduit to tribal communities, ensuring programs and initiatives are developed in collaboration with Utah's tribal nations to ensure strong partnerships and tribal consultation. We are pleased to share that we have over 25 statewide partnerships and 37 campus partners. We are also pleased that this past year we participated in over 30 Title VI Native Education Coordinator engagement and outreach opportunities, reaching over 14,000 K through 12 Native American students throughout the state of Utah. Today's event continues our commitment to serving Native communities throughout Utah. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's Hinckley Forum. My name is Gabby. The Hinckley Institute of Politics is a nonpartisan institute at the University of Utah. The Hinckley provides an array of transformative experiences for students through internships, forums, and classes. Hinckley forums seek to foster public discourse and civil debate for the most current and pressing issues, bringing in local, national, and international thought leaders. Today's forum is titled Engagement and Empowerment, a conversation with Native and Indigenous leaders. Today's event is co-sponsored by the American Indian Resource Center and the Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors. We want to thank Haley Roberts and Emma Taylor for their leadership in organizing this forum. We are excited to be joined by several great panelists. Dustin Jansen is originally from Coyote Canyon, New Mexico. He was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation and is an enrolled member. Dustin received the science from Utah Valley University, his history Bachelor of Arts from Brigham Young University, and his Juris Doctorate from the University of Utah's S.J. Quinney College of Law. Dustin practices as an attorney and a judge in the tribal court system for nearly 15 years. He has served as a judge for the Confederate Tribes of the Goshute Reservation, a hearing officer for the Navajo Nation, Office of Hearings and Appeals, pro tem judge for Zuni Pueblo. He has been teaching at the UVU since the fall of 2015 and is the program coordinator for the American Indian Studies program. In 2020, Dustin was appointed as director of the Utah Division of Indian Affairs by Governor Gary R. Herbert, as he works with the tribal leaders within each and 8 federally recognized tribes in Utah. Tara Bentley has long history of advocacy on the Navajo Nation. Tara is committed to issues of healthcare, education, and economic development, with a background in construction and community resilience. Tara has brought her enthusiasm and talents to the Utah Navajo Trust Fund before joining the Rural Utah Project. Through her work, Tara works to empower underrepresented voters in rural Utah through training, education, voter registration, and issue advocacy. The Rural Utah Project identifies, invests, and ignites a dialogue with voters that live in Utah rural areas, empowering them to take action and vote on issues that matter most to Utah's future. Tara believes that when we organize overlooked communities in our state, we will be able to inspire the important conversations and create lifelong citizen advocates for Utah's future. Brad Perry serves as the vice chairman for the Southwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation and employed by the tribe as the natural resource officer. Brad grew up in Syracuse, Utah, near the Great Salt Lake. Prior to working for the NWBSN full-time, Brad worked for the United States Department of Interior Reclamation from April 2003 to November 2019. Most of his time was spent as the program coordinator for the Water Quality Improvement Program, Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Program for 11 years. Mr. Perry received a Bachelor of Science in Speech Communication from the University of Utah in 2005. Brad likes to golf, fish, listen to music, and spend time with his nieces and nephews. Today's panel will be moderated by Nicholas Cockrell, Managing Director of Community Engagement at the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Nick studied history and political science at the University of Utah and received his master's degree in legal studies. Prior to coming to the Hinckley Institute, Nick worked on voting rights issues at the Episcopal Diocese of Utah and the ACLU of Utah. As a student, he entered with the Campaign Legal Center in Washington, D.C. Please join me in welcoming our guest.
Hi there, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today and for your patience with us as we got started a couple minutes late. I also wanted to recognize Dr. Dan McCool. He was originally set to moderate today's panel, but unfortunately fell ill and wasn't able to join us. So thanks to his work, we were able to create this program that we'll now get into. We're going to spend a lot of today talking about the current and present, as well as future possible solutions to improving civic engagement and voting rights and voting for Utah's indigenous tribes and populations. But I think it's important to start with a little bit of history. So Brad, I'm wondering if you can start us off by maybe, are there some important moments or dates to keep in mind that Native American individuals and tribes faced in Utah, just to contextualize this conversation that we're about to embark upon?
July 24th, 1847.
All right. What happened?
It's when actually the Mormon pioneers entered into the valley. I think our oral history knew they were coming because of the runners between the Shoshone bands through eastern Wyoming in there. But that was a big one. For our tribe personally, it is January 29th, 1863. For the Bear River Massacre, the largest mass killing of Native Americans in United States history. And after that, just kind of every day since.
Yeah. I think also, also to contextualize our conversation, I'm hoping you might be able to help us out, Mr. Jansen. Native American tribes are sovereign nations and have a very unique relationship with other forms of government that many of us here might be more familiar with, like state government, county government, or even our federal government. What does that relationship look like between the state of Utah, for example, and tribes? And what type of voting, what type of elections do voters on and off reservations participate in?
We do have 8 federally recognized tribes. We have a couple tribal groups that never received federal recognition or at some point lost it. So I'll throw another couple dates out there. 1954, the Termination Relocation Act. But also, if we're talking about voting, 1924 is when the Native Americans became citizens of the United States. But didn't actually get the right to vote probably until, I think the latest was 1956, and Utah was the last state to allow Native people to vote. But as far as our relationship with this between the state and the 8 federally recognized tribes, it's government to government. You know, we work. The state's leaders work directly with tribal government leaders. We communicate that way. In 2014, Governor Herbert passed a consultation executive order requiring certain cabinet level of agencies to appoint a tribal liaison that works directly with their tribal counterpart. And that's been successful in a few agencies that really hit the ground running on it. And that creates a really good open dialogue between the state and tribal governments out there. But as far as elections goes, you know, the tribes, if you're a tribal member and you're living on reservation, you can vote in your tribal elections. You can vote in your county elections where your reservation is located. You can vote in the state where you live and currently located. And you can vote in national elections also and do that. Not all tribes want state voting. boxes, ballot boxes on their reservation. Some tribes love it, like Navajo Nation. There was a time when the state said just mail in your ballots, and Navajo Nation citizens said, culturally, we're supposed to pick our leaders in person, so we need to go up and show up and do this. And so they put boxes out there. But in that response, we sent boxes to the Ute tribe, and the Ute tribe was like, please don't put those here. We'll go off reservation and vote off reservation if we need to. But that consultation order does a lot to ensure that this shouldn't happen, okay? We shouldn't do things that affect the tribe's ability to govern or the happiness of its citizenry without consultation with them. And that was one of the steps that we did good for one tribe, but made the mistake of laying down a blanket rule for all tribes rather than communicating with each tribe individually. And that's something that we're going to have to learn as a state, and probably all of us at Pierre have to train state leadership to do.
Thank you. Also, going into more recent history, I want to talk about, or ask Tara to talk about some of the work that she and her team members at the Rural Utah Project were deeply involved in during the 2018 elections, right? We have this special relationship between Indigenous tribes and our state and federal government. But even looking at the county level, San Juan County has one of the highest densities of Indigenous voters in our state, if not the highest. And geographic area is overlap and shared with reservations and this sovereign tribes. So Tara, can you tell us a little bit about your work in San Juan County, maybe telling us what important turning points were in recent history and what you and Rural Utah Project have done to increase engagement there?
Sure, definitely. First, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tara Benali, and I'm a Hopi descendant. I'm of the Eagle clan. I was born for Laschi, the Marks on the Cheek clan for Navajo. My maternal grandparents are Bipetwoni, or my grandfathers, and my paternal grandfathers are Oge Zunurik people. I live in San Juan County for the past 35 years, most of my life. Uh-oh, I think I lost that. And
Here, I can help you out.
I think one of the biggest turning point in 2018 was that Rural Utah Project had established a nonprofit organization to seek out individuals who come from their own community within San Juan County, southern San Juan County, Utah, who know their families, their community, and the people that reside on the Utah portion of the Navajo Nation. When we first started in 2018, we were parked outside of clinics, chapter house, chapter meetings and stuff, just doing voter registration. Hey, are you ready to vote? Are you registered to vote? Do you need to vote? Or I'm sorry, do you need to register? And so a lot of the times people just like, okay, wait a minute. But we started to get a response organically to see how the people would respond to us at these places and even at events and stuff. We weren't getting the numbers that we had hoped to, and so we started to do door-to-door knocking, going into the communities and start knocking on doors within each of the communities. So there's 7 chapters in southern San Juan County, and each of those chapters I had previously worked in with the Utah Navajo Trust Fund, where we built homes. So I had created a rapport with the people at the time, and people recognized me when I came to their door. A lot of the things that I needed to learn was when I started knocking on doors, people that didn't know me, they started to slam the doors in my face. No, we don't want to register. Why are you here? The system has failed us time and time again. Why should we even consider registering to vote? So going forward, I had to go back to the drawing board and rethink, okay, what do I need to do to bring the people to me, to help the people understand what's happening? When I first started approaching doors, I just said, hey, my name's Tara Benali. I work for the Rural Utah Project. And that had to change. I had to come to the people's level. I had to understand what my culture, my background, and my heritage brought to the table, because it was for the people that I was doing it for. So I started using my clan and started speaking my language and introducing myself in Navajo. The people start to respond to me. There's a cultural confidence here that we don't recognize and don't try to seek out. A lot of our Indigenous families, our families, are not confident in this system. They're not confident in themselves, putting their voice out there because they know each time and time again, the system will fail them. And we've seen it in history. And so being able to go to my community members and say, look, this is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, registration, voter registration, is because it's our voice. One of these days, we can make it our own. We can learn the system, make it our own, utilize it to our advantage to improve our communities. And knowing the issues that were hitting the communities that were at that time, when I was working with the trust fund a couple of years before, helped me to understand where my community members were coming from. And so I brought all those issues up. This is what we need to do to register to vote. These are the issues, these are the infrastructures that we need in your community. Register to vote, and I will help you to make that happen. And we were fortunate enough to have Willie Gray Eyes and Kenneth Mariboy run for office that fall. And so we made it come true for the people.
And 2018, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the first time in Utah's history that the county commission was had an Indigenous majority governing. Is that right, with the election?
Absolutely, yes. And so because Willie Gray Eyes and Kenneth Mariboy ran for office, we were fortunate enough on the ground, at the grassroots level, educating the people on this system. We had two individuals from our own community who knew our issues and who could address those issues at the county level. And so we helped to vote, get people out to vote. We helped them by transporting them to and from the polling places. We helped to show where the satellite offices were at, the early vote locations, the drop boxes. At that time, I believe we only had one drop box, and that was in Bluff. And so we made it a point to help transport people to those polling places, to the ballot box, and to the early vote locations.
But also, right, we had that Utah Supreme Court case that corrected the gerrymandering that was happening in San Juan County. The voting districts were drawn in a way where Navajos would never be a majority in any district. And so the Utah Supreme Court ordered a third party to redraw those district lines for those county commissioners that actually evened it out to where there's one area that's pretty solid Navajo, one area that's pretty solid non-Indian, and one that's pretty much up for grabs every season. So, but that gerrymandering ruling was huge and pivotal in getting things changed down in San Juan.
Sticking on that gerrymandering subject just for a minute, or the redistricting conversation, are there any, we just went through this redistricting process again a couple of years ago. What concerns, if any, do you all have with the process as it relates to empowering or maybe disenfranchising, on the other hand, Indigenous voting rights? Is there something that you all are specifically looking at there going forward?
So the agreement with the redistricting and everything, with the lawsuit that had happened, that agreement expires this year. So we're looking to help to educate the people on why voting is an important process and what we need to do to utilize it and to continue participating even after we dropped our ballots. And so being able to help educate the people about the system and what it means if we lose a couple more seats that aren't ours, because right now we only have one Navajo that's at the commission level, and we have another individual that's non-native, and then two that are non-native. And so just being able to educate the people and ask them, and hey, what is it that you want to see happen? What is it that you currently see happen? Because a lot of the stuff that Kenneth and Willie had taken off the table as far as lawsuits that were concerned. We had a number of lawsuits against the state of Utah. When they came into office, they did away with a lot of those lawsuits, and we were able to reestablish Bears Ears National Monument. And so just being able to bring something forth tangible for the people to see, that's what we need to see happen here again. So going forward with this, we're working on a lot of different issues where we're able to maybe open the early vote locations at the chapters as opposed to just maybe 2 or 3 of the chapters, being able to help the people to understand what the election process is taking place. Right now we have the primary election coming up, so we're hoping to be out there to educate the people on the primary on those processes again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a lot of these issues are really, like Ms. Benali said, are in those areas where there's, the large reservations, Navajo. So Northwestern Band has never had a reservation. And so we don't have a group of people. We don't have an area. Most of our people are concentrated between Pocatello, Idaho, and Salt Lake City, Utah. And so, you know, if you're a District 1 with Blake Moore, that's pretty much who we are, but we don't have a lot of people. And so our voting, you know, is for the last 15 years for our own tribal voting, it's just been through mail. We work with the counties that we work in. Box Elder County has allowed us to have our people send the ballots there. They can drop them off in our office and we can take them there. And so we have, you know, a county recorder and clerk that reads our elections. And so nobody, you know, people can't claim, well, this or that. It was a third party. And so our job, my job as a tribal leader is to support Ms. Benali and the other tribes with reservations that have those sort of concerns, because, you know, our concern is we're hoping that our people drop their ballots in the mailbox, you know, not if the area is being gerrymandered. And so each tribe is a little bit different, but yeah, we're certainly unique in that. So we encourage our people to vote through the mail if they can.
You mentioned a few subjects I want to come back to, but first talking about this cooperation and coordination, what sort of cooperation in your role have you seen be most successful, whether that's with other tribes, with the state government, or with other governments or other organizations? What partnerships have you seen as being effective to increase participation, and why do you think that particular approach might have been effective?
Well, since Dusty's here and he's got a meeting with Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to say the state of Utah.
Yeah.
But for really, to be quite honest, it is. Our hunting, because we've never had a reservation, our hunting rights came into question, and we've had to fight them in the state of Idaho. We've had to fight them in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The state of Utah did approach us and say, hey, you know, you guys have your own, you know, what can we do? And we were able to sit down with them. It took us about a little over a year to negotiate, and those weren't easy negotiations, but it took us a while. And at the end of the day, you know, Dustin sat down with us and said, you guys are really exercising your sovereignty to sign a memorandum of understanding with the state of Utah. And we did, because that was what was important to our tribe in our indigenous territory. And it wasn't allowing us to hunt. It wasn't telling us what our numbers were. It was just recognizing that we have this treaty and the right to hunt. Based on that, you know, we were fighting the court case in the state of Idaho, and the Utah State Attorney General and the Solicitor General and Lieutenant Governor advocated for us in an amicus brief, and also came to the Ninth Circuit Court and argued on our behalf. And so we had the Department of Interior, the state of Utah, and ourselves, and that's unheard of to have those three distinct groups working together. It's just built more of a relationship with the state to where, you know, if people are worried about oversight, we can just, you know, say to the state, hey, you know, what do you think? And they've included, and the other thing is they've included us. You know, the biggest topic right now is the Great Salt Lake. You know, a lot of people ask me, well, don't you think the Native voice, you know, should be out there and be heard? I'm like, you have no idea how many boards I'm on. You don't have any idea how many times Director Ferry has called me, or the Lieutenant Governor or Dustin has called and asked, what do you guys think about this? To the point where we're building our own our own project in Idaho, but the benefits come to Utah. We'll be saving about 13 to 15,000 acre feet of water a year that we can send to the Great Salt Lake. That was pretty important to the state. And so we've been able to work with them and gain their support to get funding. You know, a letter from the Lieutenant Governor in your funding package when you submit an application looks pretty good. And same with the DNR. And so that relationship for us has really built to where it's not super common that you see that sort of relationship with the state government to where they're assisting you in finding grant fundings. And so, and they didn't, you know, it wasn't that they came and said, hey, we have to do this for you. It was, you know, let's talk about one thing. Once we got over that hurdle, it was, what else can we do to help? What else can we do to help? Would you mind meeting with, or would you mind? And that's appropriate. As Ms. Benali said, government to government relationships. We have to have those. You know, we get asked, or I personally get asked to come to some of the protest rallies there at the Great Salt Lake, at the Capitol. And whether I believe in them or not, the state's involved us so much to where the Northwestern Band doesn't really show up because we support what's going on. We're only one voice. And so we support the state and we support those people that want to protect the birds and the water. And so it's one of those balances to where if somebody says, you guys need to be here for your voice, it's like, you should have asked the first question, is the state of Utah already listening to you? And our answer is yes. And so that's the best way we can represent public groups is talk to us and be like, yeah, we have that sort of relationship to where we can call and get a meeting and say, hey, this particular group is worried about X, Y, and Z on the Great Salt Lake. And that's really how those partnerships should work.
Absolutely. I echo everything that was just said. And on that note, what was really stressed that I like, it is a two-way street. A lot of times tribal leaders will say, you never come out. You're not coming out to meet with us. And sometimes lieutenant governors like, can you come here? You can come here too. I'll make time for you. And we're really fortunate this term to have this administration as far as Indian Affairs goes. Lieutenant Governor's been tasked with Indian Affairs, and she tries really hard, and she has a really good relationship with nearly every tribal leader in the state of Utah because she sees things that she can see what's going to take a long time to get done, what's going to take a few months, what can I do tomorrow, and she's so good at identifying what can I do right now, and what can we keep working on, and so we're really privileged to be working with her, but also we're privileged to have Larry Echohawk on with the governor's staff and the attorney general's staff as an advisor, and he's been doing Indian law for 50 years. He was Assistant Secretary of Interior, right, Director Bureau of Indian Affairs, and he's here, and he has that knowledge and that wisdom, and he's at an age where he's willing to advocate, and he doesn't really care who says what.
Exactly.
He's where he's at right now, and it's amazing. And I should say that I think every tribal nation that we work with in this state has been fantastic. Northwestern Band, probably the most fantastic. I'm not saying that just because he's here, it's because it's true. People call me and they say, we need a tribe to work with, a tribe that understands this, and a tribe that knows this subject and is willing to speak on it and do this. And I'll say, have you tried Northwest Band? Those guys are amazing. They're involved in their communities. They team up with the cities there with Ogden City for different programs and for Indigenous, or was it just Northwest Band Day or just Indigenous Day in general? And they got so much foot traffic going through there in that cooperation. So cooperation really does work, and we just hope that we can keep pounding that message.
I'd like to just kind of go off of what you just said. Also, all of this was made possible through the Bears Ears National Monument movement back in 2013 when my brother Mark Mariboy was knocking on doors and asking people, hey, join up with this, where there's an opportunity for us to speak about Bears Ears, which is one of our sacred mountains. And so a lot of these conversations were made possible currently through the Bears Ears National Monument movement because this showed the nation and the people within, not only within Utah, but within the Navajo Nation and with the rest of the nation, that these conversations weren't happening at all anywhere prior to 2016 when Bears Ears National Monument was first made a monument. And so being able to understand and realize what the Bears Ears National Monument did for the people, not just Navajo, but Ute, Southern Ute, the 5 tribes across the Colorado Plateau, and then even elsewhere within the nation. You had so many different things happening across as far as the Standing Rock incident. There's so many other incidents that have happened and where we have started to help to elevate our own voices and empowering the people. So a lot of these conversations have made these issues possible and are at the forefront today.
I think going further into this maybe activism and individual organizing subject, Ms. Benally, I'd love to ask you more about some of these individual barriers that folks are facing in Indigenous communities, right? So we've already talked about some of the geographic challenges that we face, just vast distances maybe between the distances to a voting center or lack of drop boxes. What is some of the work that you're doing to address this geographic challenge that a lot of our Native communities face?
Again, with the ballot box,
Yeah.
we're hoping to make that available to each of the chapters this year. We're hoping to do satellite offices at each of the chapters as well. So personally, myself, I work in Arizona as of right now, so I'm working with the Hopi tribe and the Navajo Nation to help make things possible there, make things easier there with voter registration. So the issues I have to learn in Arizona as opposed to what's happening here in Utah. But again, the same thing. Ballot box issues. Hopi only has one ballot box in one location, and from one end of the Hopi Nation, it's an hour drive to that ballot box. And so a lot of people don't know that that ballot box is there. And so it was the same case here in Utah back in 2018. Those are a lot of the barriers. You know, we have people that don't have the transportation. We don't have elders who can interpret, who don't have an interpreter to help interpret their ballots or to help them understand what's on the ballot, what the amendments are, what, you know. And then just being able to identify which individual is running for office and what office they're running for. So those are still some of the barriers that we still have. And even interpreters who are knowledgeable in understanding, not being able to transcribe English to Navajo, not verbatim, but from the people's voice, what they understand as an everyday language, not verbatim, like through the court system, because it's two different languages, and so you have to understand what the people are wanting, what the people are seeing, what they're hearing, and what they're understanding. You have to be able to come down to their level. And so that's still a big issue here, is the interpretive part of the, you know, we have universities and everybody wanting to jump on the wagon with us, but it's like, wait a minute, where did you get your knowledge of the Navajo language from? If it's not home, on the grassroots, at home within our communities, then what makes you think that you're able to educate our people at that level? Because it's deeper than that. It's so much deeper. We talk about the surface here. Western societies here, and we're here. Our knowledge, our capacity, and what it means to be Native is deeper than that. So that's one of the biggest barriers that we have still currently, is just being able to help people understand what the ballot in the system is about. Another barrier that we have is being able to get people to the polling locations again. We still have that barrier because of weather is the biggest factor at that time. You know, there's muddy season, rainy season, and all of that, transportation, and just being able to have enough people to provide transportation to individuals who, and volunteer has been great since 2018 when we, during election years, we were able to get enough volunteers to come out and help transport a lot of the individuals to the ballot boxes. And so there are still some challenges out there, like the redistricting here, like he had mentioned here. It's going to be another thing that we're going to be facing after this election. So there's just so many things that we're working on and trying to keep tabs on, even with the legislative session, what bills have hit the floor and what are passing through. Again, I'm not really familiar with what is going on with Utah because I'm on the Arizona side of things right now. And so, yeah.
So we've talked,
Can I ask you a question, since it's kind of along the subject, we were just talking about challenges faced. Can you speak about the issue of addressing homes on the reservation and how that's tied to voting? I saw something on the news about that, and it's going to enable more people to vote by putting addresses on homes.
Yeah, actually, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So in 2019, when we did the election in 2018, we found also that at the time the county clerk was doing was that he was kind of guesstimating where each individual lived by using the P.O. box number and the directional addressing for physical address that a lot of the people use. And so just we found that they were put in on alongside the cliff face in the river. I think the nearest one that was closest to where they actually live was 5 miles, and the furthest was 50 miles. And so being able to implement the plus code, we were able to, within a 3-foot by 3-foot accuracy, we're able to put individuals at their place of residence using the plus code. So, and we have plus coded almost every home on the San Juan County portion of the Navajo Nation, and we're currently working on White Mesa, our neighbors to the north, and so we're hoping to have that implemented and everything. You know, the plus code has been a wonder to us. It's been a beautiful tool to use because within our emergency response, we're able to work with our EMS, our police, and those departments, and to establish one single dispatch office where even though our families have a 970, which is Colorado, 928 Arizona, 505 New Mexico, 435 number, they're able to call one dispatch office and reduce their emergency response within half an hour, from 2 hours to never showing up. So Rural Utah Project has made that possible, and it's starting to gradually, organically grow across the Navajo Nation, across into other tribes as well.
All right, I have maybe one more question, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A, more Q&A from the audience here. Mr. Jansen, I have a question for you and your work within the state. As we approach the 2024 election, it's coming really fast at this point. What are some of what do you think is most important that we need to keep in mind, either our lieutenant governor or other groups that are doing on-the-ground activism? What do you think is important, or even what issues do you think are important to Indigenous voters for this upcoming 2024 election?
I think there are going to be a lot of practical issues, along with ballot boxes, right? And plus location is road building. There's so many roads that are missing in rural Utah, and it causes a problem. You know, we talked about response time being lessened by 30 minutes, a usual 2-hour response. You know, a lot of times people say, why? People assume that it's really violent on a reservation because the high mortality rates out there. But a lot of it is because you need a car wreck, you're waiting 2 hours for an ambulance, then you got to survive the 2-hour trip back to the hospital. So distance is a big thing. I think bringing high-speed internet to our rural areas is going to be, I think what COVID pointed out is it was missing. You know, we had kids from San Juan County come up testifying. You know, sometimes if my mom will take me to around the mesa, I can get a signal, right? If I walk up the mesa, I can get a signal. Or even this idea of sending little hotspots out with kids and teachers not being familiar with how much data those use for a 1-hour class, and your 10 gigs just went your very first class period, it was gone, and opened a lot of eyes up for that. So we're working with tribes and really looking at expanding broadband and laying down fiber wire as many places as we can. That's going to take a lot of right-of-way agreements. And we need a legislature and an administration to be willing to do it. We need a legislature and an executive administration to help fund roads. And we also need our leadership that will enforce boundaries. We're not very good about that. There's not, and that might be a community problem more than a leadership problem. As a citizenry, we need to look at each other in better ways. Wilma Mankiller said, public perception creates public policy. How we see people determines how we treat them. If you really want to know how Utah's relationship is with its Native communities, look at the laws that affect these Native communities, and look at the cooperation between state leadership and tribal leadership. I think this session or this election, tribal leaders are really going to take a hard look at their state representatives, this state legislature, because they're pretty absent from the lives and issues of tribal government. And so they'd want that to happen too. But otherwise, I think most tribes want leadership that understand tribal issues. They understand what a treaty is, that it is actually the supreme law of the land, our treaties, just like our U.S. Constitution. And we need leadership that respects that encourages its constituents to abide by those things and continue that respect. And I think that would clear up a lot. At least that's what I'm hearing from a lot of tribal leaders. But we have a tribal leader right here, so maybe he can tell you more.
Yeah, do you have anything to add?
I agree with everything Dustin said. Looking at it geographically of where we're located, We're the only tribe that has indigenous territory basically in the Bear River watershed, and the Weaver River watershed, which feeds the Great Salt Lake. So obviously people that look at natural resources and slowing the I mean, it's great to expand, but if you have more people than water, that's going to be a problem, you know. And that's, you know, in the native culture, we moved water to water. We didn't travel unless we knew there was water someplace. And if that happened not to be there at a certain time, that was big trouble. We're seeing those same sorts of things come back. The other one is for legislature to listen to us. I mean, we talked until we were blue in the face about the Indian Child Welfare Act, and it still didn't pass. And recently, Governor Cox signed a law that says that the state of Utah can have authority to overrule the federal government when they feel like it's federal overreach. I worked for the federal government for 25 years, and I don't understand that. As a tribal leader, it's very scary to see that sort of thing, because that includes our sovereignty, that includes Indian child welfare, that includes hunting.
Yeah, every government, every tribal government promise is linked to a federal mandate. So for a state to say we have the right to ignore any federal mandates until we deem it worthy or
Yeah.
legal, I mean, there's already systems in place for that. So, I mean, we have judicial review, we have checks and balances, we have agencies that say, hey, this new federal law came down. Attorney General do we have to follow this, or is our state okay? There's processes already in place. So to have a political environment where there's so much partisan posturing, it makes you a little nervous. And I agree.
Yeah, so we look for leaders that are, I mean, we're willing to tell everybody and share our experiences with Indian child welfare with, you know, like Dusty and I, we really get to know each other negotiating our hunting memorandum, you know. The state was getting a little nervous about if we could or if we couldn't. We resolved that. And so we just need the legislatures to come and listen to us and not think they know best for our kids. We know what's best, and that's what we want. Is we want people that will actually listen and say, "This is best for you." Because at the end of the day, the judge still has the right to uphold that or change it. And so it's not really that the tribe has. I mean, we do have our own rules and stuff, but at the end of the day, the state judge is the one that decides, and so it doesn't hurt to have a little bit more protection of our kids, you know. Dusty mentioned termination. You know, there was termination, there was assimilation, there were a lot of different things that took children away from our homes that sadly didn't grow up with their culture. And so that's what I look for as a tribal leader is basically how do we protect our children, how do we protect our natural resources, and how can we work best together? You know, roads. I mean, if the Navajo Nation calls and says, "Hey, can we get the Northwestern Band support for roads?" We'll do it. You know, and that's just kind of how we look at things.
I think one of the biggest issues that we keep missing is the uranium issue too. All these corporations coming onto Navajo and disrupting this uranium that's been on the ground for so many years, and our people are getting sick from it. And nobody's addressing that issue because they have these corporations in their pocket at the federal and state level. And so why isn't that issue being addressed? Those are one of the things that we want to educate the people on, but we're busy trying to get the people to educate the people on the election system. And so we need individuals who can bring these issues to the people and help to educate the people at that level as well, because I'm tired of seeing my people die left and right. I'm tired of seeing my people have these illnesses, these painful illnesses, and nobody's addressing those issues. And so those are some of the things that I hope to see happen here in the next few years for those to get addressed, especially through the election and voting process.
Thank you all for participating so far in our conversation. We do have a few minutes still for a few questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and our student staff, Gabby, will run the microphone to you. Please wait for the microphone so that folks online can hear. have one right up here.
Fall for it again.
I have a question about ICWA. I thought the Supreme Court just ruled in favor of it, affirming Native sovereignty over their own children. So to hear that this happened in the state surprised me because I hadn't even heard that in the news. I heard of another state that's trying to do the same thing, overriding federal mandates, between tribes.
Yeah, so what was happening is the reason why a lot of states were trying to get a state level ICWA was there was a really good chance with this current Supreme Court that ICWA could collapse. And a lot of social services, foster care systems, they recognize the Indian Child Welfare Act as the gold standard. The reason why they recognize it as that is because it requires placement of a child taken from their parents' custody to be placed with a family member, okay? Every social service agency will tell you that those are the most successful placements that can happen, is that child is placed with a family member. ICWA says family, immediate family, tribal, Indian, and then an open adoption. It creates a preference level, okay? So it was being challenged that it was racially discriminatory. That challenge has failed a number of times because usually it was a non-Indian family saying, you're discriminating against us because of our race, that's why we can't adopt this Native child. And those always failed. This latest one was, this is discriminatory because you're making this Native child jump through more hoops to get placed than any other child. Now, the reason why it should fail is because it's been standard Indian law that Indian isn't just a race. Indian is a legal status. It's much like a citizenship status, and that carries with it rights and privileges. And so when you're saying that the Indian Child Welfare Act is racially discriminatory, you can't say that anymore because it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with an agreement between the federal government and a tribal government. That's it. It's a government-to-government thing. I'm sure you all seen the Bourne Identity. Jason Bourne goes in the embassy with these people, these foreign cops chasing him. They stop the cops. Why was Jason Bourne able to go into the embassy? One is because he had his passport. He was a U.S. citizen. It didn't matter if Matt Damon was playing him or Idris Elba, okay? It didn't matter. His race didn't matter. What mattered was his citizenship. It had rights and privileges associated with it. And the Indian Child Welfare Act is one of many types of legislation that is conducted based on that government-to-government relationship. Now, the Supreme Court upheld nearly the entire ICWA statute. They're still trying to figure out, they left in question on whether or not Indian was actually a race more than a legal status. So believe me, there's that law firm that represented that family, that non-Indian family, they looked for that family. They were looking for the perfect case to take to the Supreme Court. That's what you do when you're an attorney. You look for the case that you can win to change the policies. They're immediately looking because the Cherokee Nation, Navajo Nation, they had already approved those adoptions. But that law firm sought out this family after those approvals were in place and challenged it anyway. That's why it all got kicked out, because everything was moot. They already had adopted the children. The tribes didn't interfere with it. It all was approved. But they're going to look for it more. And if you can destroy Indian as a legal status, you're going to destroy an entire section of U.S. code, okay, that deals with Native people, that says Indian is a legal status. I think that might be because it was the law firm that represented this family. They're not even a family law firm. They're oil, natural gas, resource extraction law firm. If you destroy Indian legal status, then you can easily go after reservation status, and you can open up a tribe's natural resources to the open market. And I think that's the end goal in that. And that's why it was so important for them to win.
Looks like we have time for one more question.
Something we haven't really, can you hear me? Something we haven't really discussed, and I think I'd like to broaden even further, is the urbanization of America. And, seeing so much of this private land just disappearing, and which I consider as our heritage. And I love, you know, I love America the way it started and our original, how it is right now. But I'll keep my question real short. What I would like to see, and what I'd like to see you address is possibly that I would like to see some Native American representation in every level of government, in the courts, in the police officers, everything, and just have, see what we can do to make sure that, that that we're well represented in every agency in every corner of the country.
Same. Yeah, as a tribal leader, I would agree. Currently, we have Deb Holland, who is the Secretary of the Interior, and that's a fairly powerful position. We used to, I don't know if there's any judges, there used to be Judge Bill Thorne, who was a Pomo Indian from California, but he was in the Supreme Court of Utah in appeals. It's always good to have those types of people in leadership. We have Dusty, like Dustin said. We have Larry Echohawk here in the state of Utah, but we're trying to promote that. And one of the biggest things that can help that is when a lot of these, the University of Utah is a good example of, we'll set up a scholarship where the Native kids in the state of Utah can come for free based on that scholarship. And now our kids will be open to more opportunities to do that. Because the financial burden will no longer be there. So I agree with you. It would help to have Native people in every aspect.
Yeah, I would too. When I went to law school, I think we all thought we were going to go argue in front of the Supreme Court, and but somebody stepped up and said, you know what, we need you everywhere. Some of you may do that. Some of you may go into entertainment. Some of you might go into government. Some of you might go into private practice, and all the different areas of tribal practice. And what matters is that you're there. You're there, and you're doing a really good job. I think we need we need Native people in tribal government, we need Native people in federal government, state government, and we also need Native people on the grassroots, on the ground, really delivering the message and making it happen. I think the more voices you have, the more success you're going to have.
But I think a lot of it's based on resources as well. Us as a nonprofit organization, we're constantly looking for different resources. People have donated to our organization and stuff, and I know a number of Native-led organizations that are working on recruiting candidates and helping to train them and get them into office and what they need to do when they run for office, how to speak to the people and stuff. So that was one of the things that Rural Utah Project was able to do after Kenneth and Willie was to recruit candidates who want to run for office and train them and get them into office. And so there are different organizations who are currently working on that to get more natives into office.
All right. Did we have one more quick question here?
Yeah.
There we go. And here's the microphone for you.
Do you think that the future of Native American issues and Native Americans in general, is it heavily relied on Native Americans like me, like our young students that are still in college and stuff like that? Do you think that we're going to be able to continue this work you guys are doing? And if not, what's the barriers are in the way, or is there something that we can't do to change that? I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
I think one of the biggest things is that's one of the reasons why Rural Utah Project is so successful in a lot of different areas, is because we're constantly looking to the youth, to the young people to take up these spaces. I, for one thing, I have kids, I have 3 family members that are studying law, and I encourage them, hey, go be a judge, go get on the council chamber, go do something, quit studying the law, stop it for a little bit and go out and do. Back in 2020, I had my youngest sister run for a school board. She knew all the issues. She knew how to address all these issues, but she was too busy on the sideline complaining. Get into office, make a change for the people. And she has. She's out there. She's learned the system, and now she's out there educating the people on the system as well. The more we get involved in the system and the more we participate, we make it better for ourselves, for our communities, for our people.
Yeah, I echo that. This younger generation is obviously more accepting of all people, all races, all kinds. just for an example, our tribe in the state of Idaho, the reason it's taken so long is because another Native American tribe, which is Shoshone, the Shoshone-Bannock, have stood up and said, no, they're not really a tribe. These are our cousins. I see this younger generation pushing that forward. When I was in college here 30 years ago, I was often asked, why don't you guys have a larger voice? And it was because of those sorts of things. We couldn't agree, tribes couldn't agree with each other because they all have their own issues. They all have their own lands and they all have the different things. But what I'm seeing with the younger generation, and give the AIRC a plug, is it's a way to, the students now need to really come together and understand each other's tribal concerns, because if we can unite as one voice, that will bring about a lot of change. So quite honestly, if we can't have our kids take up for us in the future, I don't know how sovereignty will actually survive, because of the way the political and everything is going. We need these kids to form those relationships with other Native students and take their expertise back to the tribe. When you find that person that you can hire that's a tribal member that just graduated as a water engineer, you hire them. And so, I'm not going to do my job forever, and so I'm looking at students right now. It's like, hey, in 3 or 4 years, when I'm over all this, like you need to start stepping up and running for council and getting an education. So, yeah, I think Native students are probably the most important aspect, and that's why the tribes push for it. That's why we argue for it. That's why we encourage our kids, hey, this school, and this school have a scholarship that they're raising funds so you can go to school, get there, and whatever we can do to help.
When I got interviewed for this job, my final interview was with Governor Herbert, and he said, can you improve the relationship between the state and our 8 federally recognized tribes? I said, yeah, we can do that. We can work on that, we can really. And then he said, can you improve my relationship with the Ute tribe this year? He said, this year, he said. And I said, no. We do need you. We need all of you. We need the younger voice. If you watch C-SPAN, that should be evidence enough that you need younger people in Congress. Okay, they're making laws and legislating and regulating things they have no idea. They don't have any idea how it even works. I don't know if you've watched the committee hearings on Google or iPhone, and those guys are just lost. They have no idea how this even works. We need you there, and we depend on you. I'll tell I teach at UVU. I tell all my students, I hope you guys run for office. Mm-hmm. I hope you guys do, because we need a change. This relationship building, some of it is going to be generational. We may need some generations to move on so that some smarter, more wise generations can move up and help fix these things.
There's also one other thing that I want to include in that is that hang on to your identity, hang on to your heritage, practice your college, ask your elders questions, ask them about your heritage, who you are, where you come from, why these issues are important, why you want to address these issues, and why you want to fight for the people. Why? The reason is because we are a protected race. We're a protected race. We come first and foremost because we are First Nations people. So keep those two hand in hand, your education and your heritage, and it'll take you a long ways. And we do need you. We need each and every single one of you to take up these spaces.
Yeah, culture's a verb. It takes practice. You have to exercise it to maintain it and to get stronger in it.
Ms. Benally, Mr. Jansen, Mr. Perry, thank you so much for joining us. Please join me in thanking our guests. Thank you.